Hello and thanks for joining us on the news on NTA International. I am Dennis Adegunloye. Let's bring you the headlines. President Bola Tinubu approves Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund. World leaders at 78th United Nations General Assembly sue for political will to eradicate tuberculosis. And Minister of Transportation decries slow pace of construction of Eastern Narrow Gauge Railway from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. Let's begin in New York, United States, where the quest of the current administration towards poverty eradication has been given a boost as President Bola Tinubu approves the Presidential Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, disclosed this at a high-level side event of the 78th United Nations General Assembly in New York. State House correspondent Musbao Danmahab reports.
These ones, somewhere in Nigeria, are part of the more than 16 million people caught in the web of humanitarian crisis. They have in turn joined the list of Nigerians below the poverty line. More than half the population of the country are in this category. This is part of the humanitarian challenges Nigeria has taken onto the world stage as it calls for help.
We have a serious situation on our hands in Nigeria.
Nigeria's government had initiated many social intervention programs to tackle poverty. The Presidential Humanitarian and Poverty Alleviation Trust Fund is the latest measure, aims at expanding the social safety net.
30% of the fundings expected in this trust fund will be coming from the government of Nigeria, and it's expected that the rest of this funding comes from other nations, the United Nations, donor agencies, philanthropic individuals, private sector, who we want to bring fully into the space, amongst other forms of innovative fundraising. The essence is for us to be able to adequately address the issues which we face on ground as a matter of urgency.
And beyond this demonstration of commitment, the government is building partnerships as it searches for a durable solution.
We are bearing on the whole brunt of this terrible thing. The world needs to know that we do not have the capacity to address it alone.
Prioritizing the needs of women and girls and the most vulnerable is at the heart of durable solutions.
The most difficult aspect of the protection and care needed for the internally displaced is the durable and integrated solutions. Your government's framework on durable solutions is an answer to that call by our Secretary General. It puts Nigeria in the vanguard of the 16 pilot countries identified for durable solutions under that agenda. So, thank you.
So the sustainability is what the entire conversation has been on. So how we can pool resources together and then provide tangible solutions that will actually take people out of the IDP camps.
Leadership is important for everything to fall in place. President Bola Tinubu has taken up the charge and providing that strong leadership for development to occur.
The United Nations maintains poverty alleviation remains the bedrock towards attainment of the rest of the Sustainable Development Agenda, and Nigeria also realizes it must get this foundation right. From New York, Musbao and Wahab, NT News.
Meanwhile, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tugar, in a bilateral talk with his counterpart from Belarus, Sergei Aleynik, agreed to forge a mutually beneficial relationship crucial to President Tinubu's 8-point agenda. The minister also met with the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States on the sidelines of the ongoing 78th United Nations General Assembly in New York. Garba Nata'ala reports.
From the exchange of pleasantries to becoming compatriots from another end, in exploring better opportunities for the two countries, Nigeria and Belarus now foresee a prosperous future in addressing each country's concerns in healthcare, education, ICT and agriculture, as well as strengthening the bilateral ties between the two countries. Establishing a framework for political consultation is of utmost importance to deepen democracy in both countries, as emphasized by the Belarusian Foreign Affairs Minister, Sergei Alinik, and extends an invitation to Nigeria's minister to visit Belarus for more inclusive collaboration. Yusuf Tuga equally had an audience with Georgia's Rabelo Pinto Chikuti, the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States. The meeting was worthwhile, with commitments to continue building on the already existing relationship crucial to the organization, comprising 79 African, Caribbean and Pacific states.
We have a lot of Nigerians living all over the world, and it is important that they have a good impression of Nigeria. This is why, our embassies, our missions all over the world need to provide qualitative services to cater to their needs.
The minister expressed optimism that the diaspora under the organization can contribute meaningfully to development through remittances and pledged his support. From New York, Garba Muhammad Natala, NTA News.
And while the rest of the world interfaces in hopes of finding better grounds for economic collaboration at the 78th United Nations General Assembly, Ukrainian president has been registering appeals for support to triumph over Russia in the ongoing war. Kulu Mohammed reports that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau welcomed Mr. Zelensky and raised hope for support.
President Vladimir Zelensky said weakened support for Ukraine strengthens Russia's aggression. This, he says, means longer time in the front lines, committing much more people, especially civilians, to pay the supreme price. In response, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau assured Ukraine of a bolstered support by Canada in favor of Ukrainian defense of its people, territory, and sovereignty.
Today, we are making a longer-term, multi-year commitment that provides predictable, steady support to Ukraine. It will include $650 million over 3 years for 50 armored vehicles, including medical evacuation vehicles that will be built by Canadian workers in London, Ontario.
At the Canadian Parliament, the need for support for Ukraine to defend democratic values was accentuated, closing in on overall decisions for political as well as military support for Ukraine to operate favorably in the front lines. The Canadian Prime Minister and Ukrainian President participated in a rally organized by Ukrainians living in Canada. Kolo Mohammed, NTA News.
World leaders at the ongoing United Nations General Assembly high-level meeting on tuberculosis have approved a political declaration with ambitious new targets for the next 5 years to advance global efforts towards eradicating the TB epidemic. Adebola Brookslyn reports.
The targets towards ending the tuberculosis epidemic include reaching 90% of people with TB, prevention and care services, and providing social benefit packages to all people with TB. World leaders also consider licensing at least one new vaccine and closing funding gaps for implementation and research by 2027.
I hear no objections. It is so decided.
The President of the General Assembly, Dennis Francis, said,
"The political declaration just approved today reflects the importance of a whole of society, whole of government approach that makes evidence-based recommendations to end TB by 2030. But time is running out. I rely on you to inspire political commitments driven by science, equity, and inclusion."
UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed recalled a private moment, saying,
"Losing my father to TB at 50, 37 years ago this week. Today, we have the tools to diagnose, treat, and what we need right now is a vaccine. Let's end TB now. It is possible."
Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, noted that in 2021, TB killed more than 1 million people and struck millions more.
And the out-of-pocket costs associated with treating TB expose them to financial hardship or drive them further into poverty. In the time it takes me to make these remarks, 10 people will die with tuberculosis somewhere in the world.
Advancing science, finance and innovation and their benefits to urgently end the global tuberculosis epidemic, in particular by ensuring equitable access to prevention, testing, treatment and care, was the focus of the meeting, with the political declaration to be submitted for adoption by the General Assembly. Adebola Brookslyn, NTA News.
In the meantime, Minister of State for Environment Isiaq Salako, who is representing President Bola Tinubu on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly in a high-level meeting on nature and people in New York, has resounded Nigeria's commitment to leading and rallying Africa and the global community to go further together on the transformation of global biodiversity ambition to action. Charles Alpha tells us more.
Isiaq Salako in his presentation said while the world is facing a planetary emergency, collective response from world leaders needs to commensurate with the scale and urgency of the emergency. As a responsible state party to several multilateral environmental agreements, including the Convention on Biological Diversity, Nigeria, he said, is doing its utmost part to promote transformative action that commensurate with the scale of biodiversity crisis. He said that Nigeria, as a country with an overwhelming population, largest economy, and rich biodiversity endowment, including extensive coastline, is exerting efforts within the country, in addition to supporting countries in the African sub-region to increase their own capacity in this regard. The Minister of State for Environment also participated in a high-level event tagged High Ambition for High Seas, with focus on protecting at least 30% of global high seas by 2030, while signing agreements to ratify the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty on behalf of Nigeria. Salako told other leaders that Nigeria is a rallying country for Africa and ECOWAS. The minister also participated in the first meeting of Commonwealth Ministers of Environment and Climate, where he made a case on the centrality of climate action and the environment sector to 5 of the 8 points priority agenda of President Tinubu. Minister of State for Environment also called for more green financing from the developed world, who are the greatest polluters. He also had a bilateral meeting with the U.S. Special Envoy on Climate, the Danish Climate Ambassador, as well as a high-level panel discussion on building the economies of the future, organized by the German government and United Nations Development Program. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
In other news, Minister of Interior Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo is making efforts to strengthen Nigeria's relations with the European Union. A statement by his media advisor, Babatunde Alao, indicates that while playing host to the ambassador of the European Union to Nigeria, Samuela Isopi, in Abuja, the minister stated that the ministry is intent on implementing key reforms in the areas of migration and the reformation of Nigeria's correctional facilities. The minister described the relationship with the EU as historical, noting that areas of bond with the ministry's key reforms include combating illegal migration, unearthing organized crime, and upholding the rule of law. Tunji-Ojo wants the EU to support the country with technology to enhance border management architecture within the country, while ensuring key reforms, especially in travel documentation processes and knowledge transfer. The ambassador also assured the Minister of Support from the European Union, noting that the EU would render technical support in managing the illegal aspect of migration, as well as curbing human trafficking and people smuggling. Pope Francis honored 2 The visit to the city of Marseille in France has delivered a speech at the Palace Pharo centered on migrants. Kolo Mohammed reports that he is due to close the meeting of a gathering of bishops and young people from across the Mediterranean.
As Pope Francis arrived at the meeting alongside French President Emmanuel Macron, attendees were reminded that he is the first pontiff in 500 years to visit the city of Marseille. His visit is part of a church-led initiative aimed at building community amongst the various people incorporating religion and culture. At the meeting, the Pope decried the exploitation of migrants, especially across the Mediterranean, which explains his direct flight to Marseille and not Paris, the French capital. The focus of his visit is on migration and inequality. Here, stakeholders opine that the migrants do not infiltrate Europe on their own. They are harnessed by a terrible ring of criminals who perpetrate this movement for selfish financial gains. A call was made to European Union authorities to go after the criminals who provide transportation in dangerous sinking dinghies for the migrants to reach Europe. Kolo Mohammed, NTA News.
You're watching the news on NTA International. We'll have more reports after this break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Former Nigerian President Muhammadu Yusufu kicked against military action to return ousted President Bazoum to power. Yusufu, in a statement released via his verified social media platform, said the country is facing a major crisis and external military intervention will aggravate the situation. He emphasized military action has never been a factor of progress for any country, reaffirming that only a negotiated solution will pave the way for a rapid return to a stable democratic order. Yusufu assured that the economic community of West African states, heads of state, will draw on their immense wisdom not to go into military action in Niger. As terrorism remains a significant threat to regional security, an interface by different nations is holding in different places and at various locations and times. Kolo Mohammed reports that the Mozambican Republic and the USA seek to deepen ties to promote security.
Mozambican President Philip Jacinto Nyusi was hosted by the U.S. Secretary of Defense to discuss bilateral relationship and security cooperation for their mutual benefit. Since 2017, Mozambique's northern province of Cabo Delgado has been the scene of conflict between the authorities and radicalized fighters. U.S. Secretary of Defense expressed commitment to work together with Mozambique to eliminate the causes of conflict and to expand security in the region.
We're deeply grateful for your partnership to counter violent extremist groups in northern Mozambique and your cooperation with the Southern Africa Development Community, the European Union, and others shows the power of partnership in combating violent extremism.
President Philip and Lloyd Austin, U.S. Secretary of Defense, who met at the Pentagon, also exchanged views on domain awareness and strengthening maritime security. Kolo Mohammed, NTA News.
The federal government says it will judiciously utilize the funds provided by the World Bank for livestock development. Musa Ali reports that the World Bank and the federal government are jointly funding a 6-year livestock productivity and resilience project codenamed LPRESS.
Livestock Productivity and Resilience Project, LPRESS, is designed to identify and address social and economic challenges in the livestock subsector of the economy. It is a 6-year project with the World Bank providing a loan of $500 million, while the federal government is providing $45 million.
The project objective is to increase livestock productivity, resilience, and to commercialize livestock such that people that are into it will be rewarded.
This workshop is to review the progress in the implementation of the project in the participating states. Permanent Secretary, Federal Minister of Agriculture and Food Security represented says government is committed to addressing farmer-herders conflict in the country.
Challenges such as poor governance mechanism, weak producers organizations, inadequate private investments, low livestock productivity, climate change, farmer herder conflicts, losses due to poor animal health, weak veterinary services, and infrastructure are set to be squarely addressed.
National coordinator of the project says the initiative is a panacea to the challenges affecting livestock development in Nigeria. Musa Aliyu, NTA News.
The slow pace of construction of the Eastern Narrow Gauge Railway from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri has come under the scrutiny of the Minister of Transportation, Saidu Al-Khali. This was when he inspected the project in Port Harcourt. Robinson Durati reports.
The rehabilitation and construction of rail lines across Nigeria is intended to help promote regional trading, ease transportation challenges, and improve the nation's economy. At the flag-off of the Eastern Narrow Gauge Railway Corridor, which will connect 14 states from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, stretching over 2,000 kilometers, Nigerians were very hopeful to see its completion in 36 months as promised. It is a project of over $1.9 billion to be financed through 15% counterpart fund by the federal government and 85% by the contractors.
Is linking the two ports in Port Harcourt up to Maiduguri. That will promote regional trading. Cost of trading will be very low. By the time we have started the passenger train, it will go a long way to cushion the effect of petroleum subsidy withdrawal.
Inspecting the project in Port Harcourt and Comcom community stations, the Minister of Transportation, Saidu Al-Khali, expressed disappointment with the performance of the contractor for only achieving about 47% between Port Harcourt to Aba in Abia State, despite government's fulfillment to its own part of the agreement.
So far, even Port Harcourt Aba, the project is just around 47%. Ideally, it's supposed to cover 47% of the entire 2,000 kilometers, which by now we should be around plateau or so. And yet we are still struggling to be in Aba before the end of the year. I'm not happy, not only not happy, I'm disappointed. When I came to where they are laying the rail lines, you can see they are using manual alignment to align the sleepers. As this century, during this era of technology, I felt if you are not ready for something, don't even start it.
At the moment, no much work is going on at the project sites, even as the minister frowned at the manual technology adopted by the contractor. In Port Harcourt, Robinson Delatede, NTA News.
Now there is a call to the government and organizations to provide education for internally displaced persons forced to flee their homes owing to circumstances beyond their control. This was the take of caregivers at the new Kochinguru IDP camp in Abuja. Adebola Brookslyn reports.
Globally, armed violence and natural disasters have displaced many from their comfort zones. Nigeria has also had a fair share of this challenge. Here at the new Kochinguru internally displaced persons camp in the Federal Capital Territory, most occupants within schooling age have no access to quality education. These analysts say may severely limit their opportunities in the future. Providing education for IDPs is not only a moral imperative, analysts say it also helps build their resilience and ability to survive amidst despair.
We do not have anything to give you except thank you. May the Lord produce more and more for them.
The government is fighting insurgency, quite all right, is fighting insurgency, but we need to fight illiteracy. Illiteracy is the root cause of the insurgency that we are facing.
People in the camp also benefited from a special medical outreach.
I'm one of them. I really appreciate. I get also drugs, back pain drugs. I really appreciate.
We all know that schools just resumed. And these people in the IDP camp, some of them don't have what it takes to furnish their kids with necessary writing materials and to aid their learning. If you have people in an internally displaced camp, we should be able to provide for certain basic needs like their shelter, pipe-borne water, and this is one of the ways we also contribute our own quota to nation building.
Observers say more efforts from good-spirited Nigerians should be made to complement what the government is doing to make lives better for internally displaced persons. Adebola, Brooks Lane, NTA News.
Now, before we go, a quick look at Sunday's weather prospects in Nigeria and other parts of the world. Well, this is where we end the news on NTA International at this time. Many thanks for watching. I am Dennis Adigunle.